Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Other 6 Days podcast, where we chat about life outside of Sundays and what it means to live
from our gatherings and not just for them.
This is our host, CJ.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm here with Pastor Ricky Jenkins. And we have a very special guest today, Pastor Chris Brown.
Pray for the podcast, folks.
The Chris Brown.
The Chris Brown.
If you're tuning in for the other Chris Brown, like most of the listeners, this is your time to opt out.
Yeah, that's jacked up what you did to Rihanna. Go ahead, CJ.
No, for those of you that don't already know, Chris pastors a thriving church called North Coast down.
You usually do your openings pretty smooth. You've let this one be hijacked already, CJ.
It did, yeah. Yeah, I got interrupted a little bit. But.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, it's a good church. Thriving? Seems like a stretch, but whatever.
No, it's a thriving church.
Yeah, 14,000 folks, whatever.
Yeah.
But are they saved?
No. And they're different folks every weekend. That's what you don't know either. So we bust them in.
Well, there you go. Maybe we'll skip the intro on this one.
Perfect.
Anyway.
It wasn't working anyway.
Hey, Chris. Anyway, Chris is a wonderful communicator, and we're glad to have him here today.
Wonderful.
We're here today to talk about the Christian faith, culture, and some practical ways that we can show it better in the world around us. So, Chris, I understand that you're an avid fisherman, and we think it's only appropriate to kick this podcast off with some of the best and worst fishing stories you've got.
What does that have to do with the other 6 days and you just setting the listeners up about increasing their faith?
Either way, as long as you don't take more than a minute on this story, that's all we need.
You're going to ask me to do a story and keep it under a minute? True.
Everyone knows I'm not good at segues, so that's why we're doing fishing stories. So.
Best fishing. I love fishing. I grew up. I have pictures of fishing before memories. I have pictures of me in diapers on my dad's knee with a little cane pole in my hand. He's holding it along with me that I have no memory of. So that was been a passion. But yeah, fishing probably down the shores of Mexico with my brother. Greatest memories.
Yeah.
Phenomenal memories.
That's cool.
Under a minute. There you go. There was a great story that went with that, but I'm not allowed to share it. Next.
Oh, you can. Ricky, you have it here now.
I'm not an avid fisherman.
Yeah.
I'm an avid indoorsman. So
you say I'm not an avid fisherman, as if you are one, just not quite avid.
Yeah. Like I do love salmon.
Hey, CJ, here's a little. I'm not an avid ballerina.
That was good. I love salmon. I love halibut.
Yeah.
I love sea bass.
So he's a fisherman.
I love fried catfish. No, my first time I went fishing, it's not the first time I went fishing. It's the first time I caught a fish.
Oh.
So we went to a place called Catfish Pond, Canton, Mississippi. Did you just laugh at Catfish Pond?
Yeah, because that's when you pay $5 and you're guaranteed to catch 7 fish in 8 minutes, even without bait.
The trout farm.
That's it. Anyways, I'm like 7, you know what I mean? And we had the bamboo stuff, and I propped my cane pole on some rocks because I was over it. It's just like, this didn't happen fast enough. This is not my sport. Ready to go play football. And I'll never forget my mom screaming, what's the red and white thing? Bobber?
The bobber, yeah.
Bobber?
Yep.
Bobble?
You can call it a bobble.
Bobble?
That's how we know you're not an avid fisherman.
So that red and white spherical shaped
floaty thing, yeah.
And my mom yelled, Ricky, you're What is it? Bobber. You're
Your bobble's bobbling.
Your bobber went down. And I jumped up and I pulled up this white perch. I still remember it was a white perch because I can still remember how delicious it tasted on some white bread. Anyways, and it was all wrapped up in the string.
Yeah.
You know, and it had been trying to fight forever, and that was my first fish.
So you rodeoed your first fish. You didn't even catch him with the hook. You just lassoed him.
I literally calfed it.
And thanks to the bobbler.
I just said calfed as if calfed was a verb because I couldn't come up with the verb roped.
I was just impressed that in the catfish pond, you caught a white perch. That's pretty good.
Oh, man. I didn't even catch that. That was good. Wow.
People are like, how'd that get in?
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, but that's my best fishing story.
I like that one.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I got to my fly rod was broken one time when we went to Colorado, and I used to go fly fishing with my dad when we were younger, and so I had to use a little hot pink Snoopy rod.
Oh, yeah.
With a lure across the some trophy water there, and so I landed a 23-inch brown trout, and the guy next to me is just screaming
on the Snoopy rod.
On the Snoopy rod, yeah,
23
so dragging it across the rocks, trying to get it in. Yeah, it was a big
fish.
trout, but everyone
That could be an IFGA record on a Snoopy rod.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So
that's good.
I've done a lot with the Snoopy rod, so even deep sea fishing. So
I remember the first marlin I caught on a Snoopy rod.
Okay.
came up because my bobbler was moving all over, and it came up with the line just wrapped all around it.
It's a white perch, maybe? I think. White perch marlin.
People looked at that and said, man, I've never seen a marlin caught in a catfish pond.
Now that's a story. That's a good story.
Bobbler.
Bobbler? You wrote for that.
Oh, man.
All right, well.
When are we going to start recording?
We're going to jump. Yeah. Welcome to another episode of The Other 6 Days. All right.
Oh, boy.
I don't care if this is beneficial to anyone else. This has been the best moment of my week so far.
I think that has been our MO for the last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we care about having some good fun.
Yeah, these have gone down random routes before. We'll end up talking about AI in here somewhere for sure.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, today we're going to have a conversation about faith, and I think it's good to start off with anything that you might be encouraged by regarding conversations around faith in our culture right now. We may even need to define what faith means, but just kind of a start there.
Yeah. And I think where we're going today, especially with Pastor Chris here, and just his angle on, I've never known a communicator that is so fiercely biblical and so fiercely attentive to the cues of culture as Chris Brown, and just how he weaves exposition with storytelling. Mm-hmm. And he knows, it's the old Spurgeonism, right? A preacher ought to have Bible in one hand, newspaper in the other. And Chris has been there. But I think, CJ, where we're going is, so the Greek word for faith is pisteuo, which is this idea of belief that acts, right? And so it's one thing to believe in God. It's one thing to act in obedience to God. And I think when Christianity celebrates faith, it's not just an easy believism, but it's coupled with a true heart that is trying to have a doism to it, right? It's the holistic followership of Jesus. And so I think we mean that on one pole. I think the other pole is just the Christian faith. Where's the status of this movement of Christ followers, like in the earth? Like what's going on with the movement that was spawned 2,000 years ago? So I think it's all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's hard to put an answer because you gave two oxymorons, Christianity and culture, and I'm like, they don't have anything to do with each other. I can't speak about that. It ain't chocolate and peanut butter. They go good together. It's if there's anything that's killing Christianity nowadays, it's our culture.
That's right.
I mean, culture is killing the calling.
That's right.
We have people that are Christian, but we act most non-Christian, unchristian, non-Christian-like because of culture.
Yeah.
We're in the most divided America that's ever happened in my lifetime. I think the only next level is a true civil war where Americans were fighting Americans. But man, we are more divided than we've ever been on this one nation, indivisible. And Christianity is right smack in the middle of it. And Christians have absolutely no issue with posting and flaming this issue or this person or this thing or that thing. And I go, what happened to the love of God in the midst of this? And culture is killing our calling right now in amazing ways.
Yeah. I think, there's an old quote, guys. There's a cardinal that died. Is a United States Catholic cardinal. I think he died around 13 or 14. Forgive me that I don't forget his name. Maybe we can find it and put in the show notes. But he's on his deathbed. He's kind of a venerable guy, done some good things in the Catholic Church. And he's on his deathbed being interviewed. And I'm going to botch the quote, but essentially he says, hey, it seems like persecution is for Christians is on the rise. This is when Pew Research was starting to discover that the nones, people who don't express any or espouse any kind of connection in any faith, were growing massively. We've got that data now. And so she's just spouting off all these truths. And then this cardinal who's on his deathbed says, I will die safely in my bed. My successor will die being persecuted and mocked in the public square. His successor will die a martyr in prison. And his successor will, in league with other Christians around the world, pick up the broken shards of a ruined civilization and pick up and carry the cross again to rebuild. And I just thought that was such a wonderful picture of how at home the Christian faith is in chaos.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I see in our culture, even though it's going to get worse before it gets better, right? But I think it's going to be so helpful to us that the foundations are falling apart, that we're having to literally do pre-evangelism, because evangelism doesn't work because no one knows who Jesus is and what Jesus is. We got to go to the kind of the original perceptions of what is life, what is meaning, and talk about how what Jesus says to that, right? So there's some shaky ground for us, but Christianity is home in those spaces. And so I'll just end my thought saying the way I look at the landscape is this notion that historically Christianity is at home in when she is powerless. And it is through powerlessness that our influence has increased over the centuries. And I've seen in history that the more power Christians gain, the less influence we have. And I think culture is about to turn back and history repeat itself where we have less power, but God uses less power to bring about more influence. So that's a bit kind of overarching, but that's how I'm seeing stuff that I'm reading.
Yeah, no, that's great. To speak to what you were talking about, Chris, as far as like, how they're kind of they're two opposing things, I was just thinking about how we show up in our faith and how culture perceives us and how we do that. So yeah, there's kind of a mix there of like how they would describe that we show up, which can not be well sometimes by the inflammatory remarks and things.
Yeah.
And then at other things by us not knowing how to live out our faith in a way to be an example to them. So
it's good.
We're prone to win arguments, not people.
Yeah.
And I can't find a verse saying win an argument.
Yeah.
I can find verses saying be prepared to give an answer, but I can find verses say we're supposed to win people. And somehow we've confused in amazing ways. We were at a conference out in Charlotte, and they said, hey, do you want to go by Joe Gibbs Racing? Joe Gibbs had finished writing a book, was part of the interview in this conference, said, you want to come by and see the NASCAR garage? And I'm like, oh, that would be awesome. I'm not a huge NASCAR fan, but
I want to see a
watching,
fast car.
Yeah,
totally.
And I like watching the last 15 laps of a 900-lap race. And I thought, okay, garage, you're going to have, 6 or 7 cars in there. Guys are working on it. It is football field and football field and football field of buildings. And I didn't realize every car has 40 to 60 of those cars, in a process of being built for all the different tracks. So I'm like, there's not one M&M car. And they're like,
know that.
No, we got 52 of these right now being built.
Wow.
So you're walking around looking at this. And at the end of the whole tour, you come by the showroom cars that are sitting there, and I was just joking around, and I was like, "Hey, so what would it cost if North Coast wanted to sponsor a car?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I go, "Instead of M&Ms, next race, I don't want an M&M on that car. I want to say North Coast Church."
Yeah.
And he's all, "Oh, that'd be about $390,000." And I'm like, "It cost M&M $390,000 a year to have a car?" He goes, "No, that's next week's race."
Wow.
That's next week's race. That number now, you can add another 100,000 on it easily for sponsorship. He goes, that's next week. So then I was joking, and I'm like, well, what if North Coast wants to be one of the little stickers back by the bumper? They're all covered. And he goes, you can do that for 75,000. And I'm all, a week. That's once again, that's just next week's race. And I go, and if you guys come off the starting line and hit the wall and you go to the yard, he's like, it's done. Same. It's not per lap. It's next week's race. And here's what I was thinking about. When the guys are doing the decals, no one has ever put the little sticker on top of the big sticker.
Yeah.
Because the big sticker is sponsored the car.
Yeah.
You don't get that confused.
Yeah.
And I think Christians and culture, that's been my picture of going, we have got all the little stickers on the big stickers like crazy. We were bought with the price. We're made in the image of that creator that bought us with the price. We are marked by him. It's okay to be political. It's okay to have your sports. It's okay to have your hobbies. It's okay to be involved in whatever. It's okay to have a ton of little stickers on the car, but the salt, the light, the big sticker is the one. And we're putting our politics on top of the M&Ms. We're putting some of our sports. We're putting whatever it is that we're putting that over the sticker.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, and that's what I mean, where culture is killing our calling.
Yeah.
We forgot. I don't care what your culture looks like. You will walk in and walk out, and people go, man, I've never seen someone love like that. Now, you can speak the truth in doing that. You can be involved in whatever you want to be involved in, but let's not get confused of who we represent. Because when the little stickers are put over the big one, we might as well not go on the track.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Obstructing the view of the big sticker, man.
Let's chase that a little, right? Like, Chris, what would you say are the little stickers that Christians are wearing on top of the big sticker that's tripping us up?
Yeah.
I would say this. anything that is keeping you from acting like Christ in any situation. I've seen softball leagues be the little stickers. I've seen incredible men of God and women of God, people that go, man, they're life group leaders, and you see them in a city softball league, and I go, oh Lord, what the heck just happened because of that call on second base? I mean, it can be as simple as something like that. Like, hey, I don't think there's a verse in the Bible that I have that says you can't play softball. How you play softball, I think, is going to be really important. But people allow whatever passions. Now, nowadays, the big one is politics.
Sure.
We take the M&Ms off the car. We put our political sticker on the car, and we make sure that if you know Christ and love Christ, you're going to have this sticker on your car too. And I'm just scratching my head going, where in the world has Christianity gone in the midst of this culture divisiveness right now? But yeah, and whatever you do, whatever you eat, drink, whatever you cheer for, you could be a Raiders fan, it could be whatever, and just go, great. Now, does the big sticker show on your life when you're in that? Or is there ever anything in your life that go, man, I blow it in this area? You may want to just, if you can't handle it, if you can't handle where the sticker belongs, you may need to walk away for good.
That's good. I felt like that happened in the pandemic too. I felt like there were some fringes in a lot of churches for whom were so deeply, for lack of a better word, enslaved to some of the things Chris has talked about with those little labels versus the Christ big label is how I'm hearing you explain that. I think, and an idol has to crush you before you leave it. You know what I mean? And I just remember our church was really trying to make sure we were just going to be on the Bible. We were not going to take sides with all that vaccine stuff and politics stuff. Hey, here's Jesus. Here's what we're about. We had a lot of folks leave for whom we were not Republican enough. We have folks leave for whom we were not Democrat enough. And I've watched a lot of those folks, because we love them, who haven't come back to church. Right? And I think they picked their God, as it were, if that makes any sense. And I think some have repented and gotten like some wisdom and clarity, and they're back and it's all good, and are back in another church is just as good. But to Chris's point, that's the danger. It ends with that idol being crushed. And if you're still worshiping that idol, you go to wherever that idol can be worshiped with like minds, and just to chase that metaphor a little bit more.
Or we throw our, let's kill this metaphor all the way up. We throw our M&Ms on our little stickers, and that way we know. I mean, here's what amazed me. 5 years ago, looking at North Coast, we didn't have a single person that had a disagreement on vaccinations or on Fauci, Center for Disease, on the pandemic, on mask, or on politics. We didn't have a single disagreement on those issues. What I had was more people theologically upset than ever before. Their issue wasn't culture. Their issue wasn't politics. They tied a theology to it, which gave them the right to go to and fight your public school curriculum or your city council or your neighbor, because it's standing for a Christian thing. And I felt like, I haven't been around all that long in life. I'm 55 years old. But I felt like going into other elections, other things in my lifetime, you could have disagreements on politics, or you could have disagreements on something. They're not. They're all theological nowadays. No one came to me with something on mask. It was, let me tell you why, if you love children and God, you're going to do. No one had a problem with vaccinations. It's let me tell you why biblically we're supposed to. I don't have a single political issue at North Coast right now, but I have more theological issues based on their politics than ever before. If you were a real pastor, if you really knew the word, you would vote, you would act, you would say this on the weekend. How dare you sacrifice our First Amendment rights? And I'm like, oh.
In other words, the idol, that framework, right, that worldview is perceived through that label. And now I see everything through the lens of that instead of seeing things through the lens of Jesus has originally kind of ordained in the word. That's good. I agree with that. 100%.
It's on top of the sticker. You know, and they're like, oh no, it's not this. It's spiritual. It's theological. It's about being a Christian. And I'm like, oh my God.
What connects it to a deeper thing to justify the position, right? And
you have to as a Christian. Because you know what you're fighting, and it's got to be based on the Bible. Otherwise, I think I'm off base. So I'm going to make sure this is a Christian duty. And therefore, Pastor, how dare you if you were a man of God? And unfortunately nowadays, there's plenty of pastors in our area telling the church, if your pastor didn't go to Washington, if your pastor isn't going to the Capitol, then they're not a true man of God. And I'm like, all right.
100%.
Well, and that's where you're seeing a lot of people, like I had written down in here, deconstruct their faith, ex-evangelicals and things like that. People are walking away, they're watching all of this infighting and some of this stuff and saying, yeah, I'm out, or I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And so
they're not walking away from Christianity. They're walking away from Christians.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we've lost our calling.
Lost our way.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, this is a little tangential, but I think it's important for this. What would you say is one of the biggest failures that you have made, that have made you better in the longer run as a leader? One of the biggest failures that you made.
That's a lot to sift through. Chris, are you sure you want
I'm going to say true. Once again, true. Man, we can't even have a multiple choice. That
Everyone listening,
that's
me and Chris
ABC.
are great friends, and we do this to each other all the time.
And this will be our last time. Okay, if we're talking, I don't know how we got into talking about the last 4 and 5 years of that, because I don't bring up pandemic anymore or church before 2009. Look, who we are today and where we're going, folks. But there was a man that came back after about a year and a half who said, I'd like to bring my family back to the North Coast. However, I need to have a meeting with you to find out if this is a church that's going to be our home or not. And I'm like, man, just get in line, take a number. And so he came in with one of those big 3-ring binders, all papers in it. And I'm like, this is going to be a while. And he sat it down and he opened it. And he goes, well, before I start, is there anything looking back over these last 2 years that you would admit to? Is there anything you could tell me in this meeting that you think you might have done wrong or would do differently? And I said, no. And he said, so, and the 2 years of decision from pandemic to everything, race, everything, you don't think you've done anything wrong? And I go, oh no, you completely misunderstood my answer. You and I don't have enough time for me to sit down and process all the wrong decisions I made in just 2 years.
Wow.
I've made more bad decisions in 2 years than I've made in 32 years of ministry up to that point. And I said, now, if you've got a binder full of a lot of them, I said, read them. I'll just sit here and shake my head and go, man, I wish I could do that different. That was not our intent on that one. Man, did that one backfire on us? I said, so it's probably just to go through your binder, because if you want my list, we don't have enough time.
Wow.
And he looked right at it. He goes, you're dead serious. And I go, I'm dead serious. And he closed his binder and he goes, maybe that's all I need to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a second. You thought this whole time I thought I've been right?
Yeah.
You know how much pandemic training we had in seminary? Right. You know how much? I said, and we made we've made the top 6 worst leadership decisions in North Coast all came in a year period.
Wow.
I would say probably top 10. I look at it and go, man, with what we know now, here's what I would have done. But in the moment,
well, what did you learn from that? Where did it take you guys?
Here's what I've learned. Churches moving forward, leadership moving forward, you've got to be nimble and you've got to have more voices than your own. Now, fortunately, at that time, we had already kind of restructured our leadership where we had decision-making coming in circles. So I would still look and go, I think we made more good decisions than bad, but we made a lot of bad ones. But I know if it was up to me to make decisions, if I was leading North Coast, we would have tanked. I'd be out. You'd be interviewing a fisherman right now, asking how that career's going.
An avid fisherman.
Sorry. And so for me, I mean, the humility of Chris, you better have the Spirit in your life, and you better surround yourself with women and men on your leadership team that can really go into this. And then the act of just being humble and admitting and walking forward and going, man, I blew that. I don't know what else you want me to say. I would drive my pickup to house after house after house where life groups were meeting, especially with men and women in law enforcement, just to apologize for a video we were putting together to talk about race. And it backfired so bad. It got one-sided. We weren't allowed to film segment 2 or 3 because at that time our streets were on fire. And the men and women in law enforcement that I was going to record as a rebuttal to night 1. So we had part 1 out there that just flamed law enforcement. And I love our men and women who day in and day out protect and serve and put themselves on the line. And that's just one of the worst things that's ever happened in my life. Great intent, great desire, and yet the outcome of that. So I'm driving around just apologizing. Apologizing for, hey, here's what we did with mask. Here's what we did. We were one of the last churches in North County to open, partly because at that time I think we had either 7 or 8 campuses. Multiples of those were in schools or in business parks that we couldn't get into. I mean, we couldn't open if we tried, but people just felt like I hung them and their family and their First Amendment rights out to dry, and I didn't care. And a lot of humility. I think I walk with more of a limp now than ever before. And I don't think I've fully recovered either. There's a sensitivity now to negativity and shots taken that hurts different.
Yeah.
Because it's still like, and here's what I realized. Maybe you could write this. Oh, this sounds so bad. I don't care. It's your church listening to it. Mine won't listen to anything I do on a podcast, so I'm safe.
And ours don't listen to it. We're fine.
Oh, that's good. That's it.
All 30 of you.
So I'm talking Amy, April, if you clicked on this to see what your husbands were actually doing today.
They're surely not listening.
Look, babe.
I have been a very well-liked guy my entire life. That was never something I sat down and said, have I or haven't I? But I learned through this period. Chris, you've been really well-liked your whole life. And you've gotten into several years now where you aren't. And I didn't know what to do with that.
Oh, wow.
I realized I've been well-liked my whole life. From a kid in school, I was a funny kid in class, a popular kid, a fun kid to have in class, great on sports teams, not athletically per se, but just I was good in the locker room. I've always been well-liked.
Yeah.
And I got into a season, and still continues in the size of church. You're leading Ricky, us today, just going, you can get 200 comments after a service, how great it was or impactful.
Oh, yeah.
But these 4 emails
Oh, yeah.
are just stinging.
Totally.
And that, how to get that tough skin and how to get your mindset to handle that.
That's good.
It doesn't come easy.
Wow. Yeah, that, man, the simple honesty and humility goes a long way, especially, and it totally puts on display authenticity, I think. And so I've seen that too. The most humbling experiences have been the experiences that I've learned the most from. And I've seen a lot too, like even in my ministry, my short ministry is the perseverance piece, just to endure. Everyone talked and they says, man, CJ, you're so resilient in some of the things, even that I've gone through here at Southwest and stuff. And but it's been so sweet to be able to navigate through that and end up being able to see the other side of it. And people are like, man, we just wanted to see if you would stand back up.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking at. And they're like, keep going. So I have so many people in my court that are just cheerleaders to say, and I was like, man, what an encouragement. And some of those took a little bit longer than that felt good. But in the long run, I've just had it's been a sweet season. And I just say, man, I didn't get it all right, but I'm just.
And if anyone's listening today and you've got a Christian leader at your workplace that you follow, you got a pastor in your life that you're under, you just encourage them, whether it's an email up front afterwards. I've never heard a leader go, man, I can't take any more encouragement. The next person that walks up and tries to encourage me, I'm going to kick him in the throat. I'm just done. I'm so tired of people encouraging me. You just can't get enough. And like we talked about in the beginning, in this culture, I found myself for the first time ever not liking our church. I've always had an issue with the church because of Christians, but I've always loved my church. But I found myself for the first time going, I don't like our church because I'd let the negative in instead of focus on the positive. So
That's good. Wow.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, me and Chris have talked about these dynamics in private before. It's sweet for me as a friend and brother in Christ just to talk about it 5 years later instead of 1 year in, right?
Yeah.
So I praise the Spirit.
we had long, bad phone calls.
Bad
Going, really,
phone
you're quitting
calls.
because I'm quitting. If you're quitting, I'm quitting. We'll do something together.
Well, Chris talked me out of quitting twice, right? Like literally, that's no hyperbole. Like I was there. And just, brotherhood, right? Just to see each other and be in there for one another. And I just praise Christ. I loved what you said about, and I think I still am kind of healing and recovering because I feel like, I think that's true for me too. But boy, there's definitely less sting on it today than there was even 2 years. It's just, so I praise the Spirit for that. And I think the only thing I would say is, all the same things. But I think, Jesus just dealing with me about forgiveness and greatness, Matthew 18. Like what greatness is forgiving people. And I praise the Spirit that I'm looking less at them today. I'm still looking at them. But I'm looking less at them and more at me. And that's I'm 47. I've never done that before in my sanctification, to look more at me. And I'm looking back at those moments instead of saying, oh, you. And I did that for years. But now I'm like, man, I wish I had that conversation back.
I could have handled that differently.
Yeah. And we've apologized. We were all is well. But it's just like, boy, that could have been a different kingdom opportunity that I didn't leverage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
If you could recommend one thing, what do you think would be the most practical thing a person could do to increase their faith in their life? Like just one of those,
I mean, let me be very save your life.
I was waiting for it.
What one thing? Hero is the Lord your God. The Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with their heart, soul, mind, and love your neighbors yourself. So when Jesus asked, what's the most important thing?
Yeah.
What one thing? He's like, I can't give you one thing. And you know why I did that? How many lines can you draw through a single point?
Yeah.
Infinity.
Yeah, Infinity. Yeah.
Infinity.
Okay, I was going to say.
And
I
so
don't know.
One carry the two.
I know the answers. I know the answer is Jesus, but it doesn't sound right.
That's like the answer.
Because if he gives you love God, then everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm loving God, I'm loving God. Love others, okay, but how many lines can you draw through 2 points? Just one. So he goes, let me give you the true point, the two things you need. So if we take that today and go, okay, how do we do that? Are you in the Word?
Yep.
And then how are you applying that by walking in the Spirit and loving others? That's it. You want to grow in your faith? People are always like, well, what good book have you read recently?
Yeah.
Or what podcast are you listening to? And I always feel bad going, can I bring back an oldie but a goodie? Bible. Because people know what everyone else believes, and people know what their favorite podcast or their favorite pastor believes. And I'm like, do you know where that's even in the book?
True. Yeah.
I had a pastor recently he was doing a complex passage that had like 4 different curveballs and a fastball at your head in it. And I'm like, you're going to tackle all this? And he did this line. He goes, now look, you may disagree with this, and you may come up afterwards and go, now, where'd you get that? And he's like, let me tell you, I've actually read the book. So if you're going to come up afterwards, I can't remember where I heard that. Oh yeah, it was at Southwest Church out in Indian Wells. It was a guy named Ricky Jenkins.
Oh, I just thought heard.
And it was last week's message. And when he tackled, when he tackled that Corinthians chapter on tongues and women in church and spiritual gifts, and it was so true because I'm like, well, I know what this author said or what this book. Have you read the book?
Yeah.
And there's something about God's word.
That's good.
Whatever your favorite author is or podcast, I promise you, it ain't a living word. It may be a good word, but it ain't living. It can return void. It's not sharper than a two-edged sword. It's paper.
That'll preach.
And I feel like we
ain't
run
living.
to resources instead of the source. Write that. We run to resources. There's nothing to write with. It's probably not original, but
That was good. Oh my goodness.
we run to resources, and I go, how
That's
about
good,
going to
Doc.
Word? You're going to love God, then what do? How do I
good.
practice the
That's
presence,
good.
that Spirit in my life, and love people daily? And I go,
Amen.
that's how Jesus answered the question, and so I'm going to stick with him.
Yeah.
That's so good.
That's good.
Yeah, I would say.
Oh, this is recorded. I'm going to go back and listen to it.
Yeah, you can get it.
Amy's all, are you listening to yourself on the way home? Babe, I said something in here.
It's a resource for you now. Yeah.
Ooh, that's rich. It ain't living. And it's right. It's just not one thing. I would say that if your faith, your followership of Jesus, does not also incorporate the sense of expectation that what you are feeding on, you are one day supposed to feed with. And what I mean by that's a terrible metaphor, but everything you're getting from Jesus now in his word, everything you're getting from Jesus in the communion of the saints, everything you're getting from Jesus as you worship and as you show up, there's expectation that you are to give that away someday. And that is the continuity of our Christian witness. And I don't think enough believers incorporate this sense of expectancy that not only am I being brought up in discipleship, but there's this end point where I'm bringing others up in discipleship. And I think it ruins our witness. And it doesn't ruin our witness, but I think it ruins our potential ceiling, if that makes sense. So here's the thing. Innately, inherently, coming up in my house, Pearl, Mississippi, it was always in the back of my head that one day I would have kids. Like that, it was expected. It's just part of the cycle of life. It was part of this expectation that everything mama's putting it on and everything daddy's saying and everything the preacher's saying and such. I grew up knowing that one day I would be responsible to pass this on to the next generation. It's just a part of my formation, understanding that I'm a conduit. I'm not an end zone. I'm not the end all be all.
Yeah.
Like it is passing through as it passed from my granddaddy down to my daddy and now to me. I will one day pass this down to somebody else. And I think we do that in every sphere, or several other spheres other than our Christianity. And I think our faith would be so much more enriched you're that 16-year-old gal listening to the other 6 days, and for some reason you are a church rat. You are a nerd. You stay in church because if you are on this podcast, you love everything about Southwest. So like you're listening to it
Because you've gotten to the bottom of the list.
exactly.
What else is there out there?
Exactly. Carrie Newhoff, such and such,
the other
CJ and
6
Ricky.
days,
So, but my point is that, man, I just want that gal to know you're a leader. And one day you're going to be raising up disciples in the Christian faith. And what does it mean then to learn everything you're learning for you, but with this sense of expectancy that I'll be responsible for translating it on to the next generation.
Wow.
I think that's what my point is this. That's when my faith comes alive.
Oh.
Yeah.
So when I'm with my guys, and now I'm going to get teary-eyed, okay? When I'm with my men, there is something else going on in my soul that doesn't happen when I'm just in church, enjoying worship, or listening to my podcast, and to some extent reading my word. It is more powerful reading God's word with my men, because it is this dream that our Lord has dreamt that it wouldn't stop with me. And so that's what I want to say to us. That increases my faith. So I haven't taught my disciples anything I didn't already know. Right? I'm just repeating everything I already know. There's nothing new for me, but it's powerful and it changes me.
Yeah.
One of my disciples, my dear brother in the faith, called me yesterday going through a crux in his life. And we talked about it. We went on the phone for 13 minutes, 28 seconds. I made sure I looked at the time signature because it's one of the best conversations he and I ever had. Told me what's going on. I says, I understand that. You get to feel that. This is what scripture says. Blah, 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 blah. It's good. God is sovereign. Da, da, da. Had a boy. Press on. And we're off the phone. And I just thought, CJ, this is the best 13 minutes of my week. Other than being with my wife and children. That was the ball game for me. And I preached several times this week. I did a podcast with Chris Brown this week. I did all sorts of things. I recorded Devos. The best thing was sharing the wisdom of the gospel with my son in the faith.
Yeah.
And I think understanding that if that's part of your spiritual formation, I am closer to Jesus because I gave the gospel away this week. So
And why is it that as men, so many times they feel so lost in doing that with their sons and daughters?
Yes.
And I go,
Yes.
you already know how to do this. Like when
right.
when I'm in church and I see this little 7-year-old and a 5-year-old come walking through and they have Seattle Seahawk jerseys on, I know one thing about that family. Your daddy loves the Seahawks because there ain't no reason in Southern California there's two little 7 to 5-year-old walking around with Seahawk jerseys on.
Right.
When I see a young man open the hood of the car and he starts saying, I'm like, I bet your dad does something with motors and engines. He's got that.
Yeah.
We pass on the things we're passionate about. We're excited about. Our kids catch it from us. Why?
That's right.
Because we're the hero. They want to be with us.
That's exactly right.
Spiritually, we've got to find a way of just so many men are like, I don't know how to lead my boy in a discipleship.
Yeah.
No. When you're driving in the truck or in the car, you just go, hey boy, you thought about God this week?
Yeah.
Let me tell you what I think about God during my week. Let me tell you what Dad did with him.
That's exactly
In
right.
the exact same way, you go, what do you think the odds are against the Cowboys this week?
Yep.
Think our quarterback's gonna? What do you think about our defense this week? We do it the exacts.
Yeah.
We make. I think the enemy has caused men to think
good.
that spiritual discipleship is something different
good.
than just
Yeah,
passing
yeah.
on your passion. Now the
right.
question comes back, Dad, are you passionate about the Lord?
Yeah.
That's good.
But if you are, just find ways. And I found
good.
I've never had a prayer time with my kids. I've never done a Bible study. They're 23, 21, and 19. By the grace of God and an amazing Jewish mom of theirs that I married a long time ago. All 3 of them are in church. All 3 of them serve in church. All 3 of them have a position, not paid, but all 3 of them have a place where they're leading worship or it's leading a small group.
Yeah.
And I go, and I'm not forcing them at this age. I got no control.
Yeah.
But I found throughout life, I was just like, hey, what do you think about God this week?
Yeah.
Hey,
So good.
what's the last time you leaned into Him for something
Yeah.
other than just a prayer before your meal?
Yeah.
Just talking like I do about everything else. And they pick up, that's important to Dad.
Yeah.
That's important to Dad.
Yeah.
That's important. That's got to be important to me.
Yeah. There's somebody out there that looks at us as heroes. And what does it mean for me to think about them as I grow in my faith? How can this, that's growing me in my faith, grow this person who looks at me and deems me to be a hero in their faith? And so Cam's 10 now, flag football practice last night. And he stops us from leaving the driveway. Dad, I forgot something. He runs in the garage, goes to get our 2 gloves and a baseball while we go to flag football practice because we got to get there early. His coach doesn't play, and I love that about his coach. And we're just throwing the ball around, playing catch before the practice starts, right? And then like we're playing so much, we're so into it that we don't realize practice has started. And his coach just yells, "Cam, get over here!" It's just, I love that he's yelling at him. That's awesome. And Cam runs and goes and does practice, decent football player. He's not, we probably ain't gonna get my house paid off from the NFL. But
sorry, Cam. By the way, I think you're amazing. I think you're great. I believe in you. Go ahead.
One person I know ain't listening to this. It's Cam. It has an okay practice, and it's dark now, right? Like it's dark. It's time to go. And that dude runs full speed out of that practice, goes to grab those gloves. Dad, let's finish playing catch. And like I'm thinking, this baseball's about to hit me in my eye socket. Yeah. I'm gonna be blind. But he was even more than playing with his buddies, he wanted time catching with his dad. Yeah. And that's the power of what it means when somebody deems you to be a hero. Yeah. Like if they'll catch a ball from you, they'll catch the gospel from you, is where I was trying to get to.
Dad, write that down. Spirituality is not going to be taught. It's going to be caught. Yeah. Just like you do with the ball and the glove.
Yeah.
Yellow.
Well,
are we running down on time? Or you got another question?
We're going to winding it down here. Yeah. Okay. We got like one more question to go.
So we're fine.
Yeah.
I'm worried.
No, I see. I piggyback off the both of yours because mine, I've seen it lately. I don't just get into the word. There was a point where I fell in love with the word. And so when I fell in love with the word, I realized what it was really about. And I was like, oh, this isn't just for me. This is to give it to others. And so once I put those two things together, I immersed myself into scripture so that I might give it away to the people around me. Yeah. And so you guys, you both said it. So the purpose of knowing more is so that I can do more with it through discipleship and others. And that's where I found it. My son developed a faith of his own because I got excited about the word of God. Yeah. Because that the inner life impacts the outer life. Yeah. And if I don't know that's where most guys I think get hung up a lot is they're like, well, I don't know everything there is to know about this word. Yeah. So I don't feel equipped necessarily to pass it on. And you say, you just got to start somewhere. Yeah. Here's what I thought about God today. Yeah. Here's what I'm learning right now. Here's what the Bible's teaching me.
That's right.
And make it life and easy. If you try to make it Bible study, then your boy or your girl's going to think, oh, spirituality is something you have to sit down and take seriously. It doesn't really fit life. That's right. It's this weird thing we do Thursdays at 7. And I go, oh, this is the core. This is who is in your dad, shaping him to be the man he is today. And my life and Sam has changed because of that. And my kids will tell you, you ask them, what's the most important thing your dad wants for Jesus? Yeah. What does your dad care about? Just be there. They'll say, just be there.
That's right.
I don't care if you're homeless. I don't care if you go to college. I don't care what you work for the rest of your life. I don't care. Right. In heaven, just be there. That's right. I can live with 40, 50 years of disappointment in your career. Yeah. I don't want to live 50,000 knowing you ain't there.
Yeah. Period.
And I think we get our priorities. We focus on GPA and we focus on MVP, and we better put it back on GOD. Otherwise, we're wondering why our kids are in their 30s and 40s and they're not going to church and they don't talk to us. And I'm like, that was coaching.
That's good
you can
stuff.
edit that out. That was too strong for someone else's church.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking like how privileged we are to have a faith that we know and treasure, and how that the Master would put his trust in us.
That was ridiculous.
And has sovereignly decided, as broken vessels as we are, that they can get this done. Yeah. Now I got to help them. Yeah. But they can get this done. I want somebody that's listening to hear that the sovereign master of the universe says, no, you got this. I'm going to help you, but you got this. And I think, what's the old adage? If not us, who? Yep. Yeah. If not now, when?
You are plan A for your son and daughter, and there is no plan B.
That's exactly right.
Otherwise, you're going to get poor substitutes like us as pastors that are trying to teach them.
That's it. That's it. Well, me and you talk about this stuff all the time, but it's just like, folks, I don't care how many these and thous you don't know. I don't care how many Greek words you don't know. I don't care about whether or not you understand what tulip is and the solas and the creeds. This gospel has largely been translated from generation to generation through people living in abject poverty who are illiterate, who could barely make subject and verb agree. And yet the faith of the disciples stands today.
Man.
My God. I know it's right.
Well, guys, we're going to drop some...
Oh, so good. Southwest, encourage this man, because if he ever quits and I quit, you'll have to visit us at our catfish pond where we'll guarantee you will catch white perch.
At a church plant in North Dallas. Near you.
We're going to drop some helpful resources in the chat for you guys in description. We always want your question, comments, and feedback here at the other 6 days.
Do you really want feedback on this?
We do, absolutely. We'd love to know what you guys are thinking.
We do want to know what
Tell us how we're doing.
thinking. Yeah.
You know, besides the encouragement, we want to know how we're doing.
Tell us how much you guys want Chris Brown to come back.
Yeah.
To the other 6 days.
You can email us at theother6days@southwestchurch.com. Chris and Ricky, any last comments before we wrap it up?
Nope.
I got one thing.
There we go.
That's on my heart.
Okay, then I'm going to follow it with something better. Go ahead.
I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children.
Okay, we're going out of time here. Yeah, and Natalie's going to want to get in on that too. So.
Let's be done.
I got a lump in my throat. I couldn't keep singing. Please send your donations
That's like a PETA.
into the other 6 days.
Well, there you have it, guys. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of the Other 6 Days podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe, follow, share, and like. And as always, spread the word. Take what you've heard and do it into something you can do to further the gospel in the world around you. Until next time.
Peace.